Good Thursday to you, everybody. Income 831. Welcome to week. Are you ready for this? Boom, bam, 14. I'm looking around for something that I don't have, but here we are. Okay, excuse me. Allergy season. It never ends for some of us who live in some areas where it's either wet, moldy, polleny. That's me. I'll copy to that. Much better. Who do we have? What do we have here this morning? Yellowstone National Park. An interesting place. If you get there, I encourage you by whatever means to spend a little time away from the major sites. That is, the lodges and some of the things that were set up for tourists, sort of the front of the park. Very cool, very Teddy Roosevelt looking, the whole thing. But it's into the backcountry where you get the true Yellowstone experience. And hey, if you're not let's hit the trail and spend several nights out where the grizzly bear roam, which is Yellowstone, you can hire, there are guided tours that go out you can hire on with. You can even go out on horseback if you don't want to walk. And they'll take you out and show you some of the geothermal features of the park. And cool place. In fact, we're going to get to week 14 here, but I have right now, I was asked by the news publication Epoch Times. Have you heard of that? And that's like APOC, AEPOCK, Epoch Times, to write an op-ed. So I did. And if you go to Epoch Times, or you just type in my name, Jeff Gardner, Epoch Times, you'll see it. And in the op-ed, I make the case as to why being outside is a lot, even outside in the wilderness, is a lot safer than you think. And being outside anywhere away from a screen is much, much safer. Okay, and I won't tell you why, because that would spoil the piece, but go over there and check it out. Okay, let's get things rolling and talk about what we're going to do this week, and then we'll talk about what you did last week. I'm looking down at my hands and I notice I don't have my rings on, so no, all's fine. I'm still in a loving, committed 30. Gosh, our anniversary is coming up here. See, I can remember the anniversary, but diggity do if I can remember the number of years. 34 years married, 35, long time. Anyway, but I'm all good. Okay, this week, week 14, I've got some chapters from Neff and Moss for you. And then I've got 3 articles that I want you to take a look at. Now, these articles focus in on social media and how it is leveraged for an organization. And you can use the information therein, that is these articles, even if you were an organization of one, that is if you're just trying to leverage social media for you. Now, I have intentionally selected articles that were written a while ago. Okay, I think, for instance, the first one, social media, it says serious social media. That's the title of it. Was written back in like 2011, I think. Okay, and you might be saying, what does this have to do with anything? See, here's what we need to be careful of as we're swept along by the changes in communication technology. And then really the changes in communication technology don't sweep us along. It's those who sell it to us that sweep us along. We need to remember fundamentals, okay? How people fundamentally behave, how they interact with their environment, and how they interact with their environment when there is media in it. In fact, there's an entire branch of communication studies called Media Ecology. I happen to belong to one of the national associations for media ecology. Media ecologists tend to be strange folk, all right? But basically, they're interested in um, what happens to our behavior, our communicative behavior, in an environment dominated by media. So, example, what happens when you introduce television into the home? How does this modify human behavior? How does this modify the space in which we behave and communicate with each other? One of the ways that you can say, oh, this is how it modifies that. If you take a look at the design and construction of the central room, the room where people gather in homes built before TV and homes built after TV, and we're assuming there's no modification. Okay. One of the things that you find is the central room, the place, sometimes was referred to as the parlor. And that comes from the French word parler, which means to talk. So it literally meant the talking room, parlor. Okay. Think of parliament. That's another French word, parlement. It's the talking thing, the talking place, parlement. The parlor was structured in such a way that it allowed people to stay near a source of warmth because, heat. So usually a fireplace, but it was organized in a way that people faced each other. So chairs and couches that, you'd have a fireplace here, and then you'd have chair, couch. And so the heat radiated out from the fireplace, and then you had people facing each other because that's what you need to do. Face en face, as the French would say, when you talk. Okay, si on parle, when one talks. Okay, or nous parlons, pendant nous parlons, when we talk. But introduce television. What happens now? And central heating. Okay. Now, instead of chairs that face each other and with a fireplace here in between, the space gets reconfigured and the furniture is set so everybody is facing in a direction. And in fact, even the wall gets designed to, at first hold a console upon which sat the television. And now the wall is designed, this big space, to hold a mount that holds the television because the screens are thinner and they sit up on the wall. And so instead of facing each other in the talking space, parlor, now we're all facing towards the screen and we're not talking. So I think, what do we rename the room in which we're not talking? Instead of parlor, the French verb for to listen or listen is écouter. Écoute. So the écoutarium, I don't know. I'm making up a word, by the way. I don't think that's a thing. Okay, that's media ecology. So what you need to get to a grasp on is the fundamentals of human behavior, and therefore an article that was written 2011 is relevant when it talks about how media impacts us. And you can use that knowledge to, and this I'm going to give you a term that's used. You don't have to remember this, but if you hear this term, this is what it means. You can use that knowledge to back in to a solution, meaning, okay, here's my problem. I've got social media for me. I've got social media for my organization. How do I leverage it? Well, how do people interact with social media, with this mediated space? Oh, well, I know that. And therefore, working backwards, I can design my social media activity, my social media presence to maximize the effect towards this known end. That is how people react. Okay. And remember, as responsible Christian leaders in this space, all right, that what we're always aiming at is communication, not manipulation. All right. Because manipulation is wrong. Communication is fine. All right. So I've got 3 articles for you to take a look at in addition to readings from Neff and Moss. And of course, keep working on your papers. And if you have questions about those papers, yes, please come in and come and talk to me. Now, concerning the end of the semester and what we're going to be doing, so you got your papers coming in, and then we have a final exam. Some folks have been asking me, will I give out a review sheet? I'm sorry, my nose just won't stop itching. It's allergies again. The answer is no. I'm not going to give you a review sheet. Why? Because my experience with giving out review sheets has been nothing but not good. Or everything not good. Not good. Okay. So since the final exam is going to be, actually the semester ends. It's over kaput by May the 2nd, which is weird. That's the Saturday. All right. The exam will be in the week of April 26th. That is a Sunday. So, just a week and change from now. All right. Here's what I will do. Okay. And if you heard this over I know a lot of you are in both classes. You're in the PR class and this class. So if you're hearing it again, all right, I'm gonna designate a time slot. I'll do it in the evening. Okay, coming next week. Next week, yeah, maybe late next week. Okay, something like the 23rd or the 24th. Okay, during which, for both classes, a time slot, I will go through a review for the exam, but I'm not going to give you anything written. All right, we'll record it. On Zoom. Anybody and everybody's welcome to come in. I'll go through the stuff. Hey, make sure that you're aware of then people, if you want to ask questions, okay, can you clarify or can you talk a little bit more about XYZ? We'll do that because we're all in this together and we're trying to learn. Excuse me. Sad part of the morning when the coffee's gone. We're all trying to develop as professionals. Okay. All right. That's this week. Hang in there, folks. All right. Don't, it gets busy, it gets stressful, but we're made for stress. We're designed to endure. All right. And, stress is not all bad. Okay. Remember in life, let me give you this, this little piece of advice. There's no such thing as a problem-free life. Doesn't exist. So don't make it your task to try to just constantly eliminate problems, and yet you're chasing them around like so many, bugs on the floor. And work in such a way that you, in effect, trade, one set of problems for a better set. There are better problems to have than other problems. Work in such a way that you get for yourself the best sorts of problems to have and not the worst sort. And you might be saying, oh, okay, very sage. That's sarcasm. How do I do that? All right. Here's another adage for life. We're all full of life wisdom this morning. Remember, since we're still in the Easter tide, okay, the lesson that the disciples draw from Easter, from the resurrection, because remember, on the front end of it, until Pentecost, they don't understand. They've not received the Holy Spirit. They don't get it. And when our Lord is crucified, they're like, what? Okay. But here it is. Life is sacrifice. But here's the difference between a bad problem to have and a good problem to have. Here's the trade you're trying to effect. Try to organize your life as much as you can in such a way that you're able to choose your sacrifice. Because if you don't, choose your sacrifice, and you can do this every single day. You make a conscientious decision to choose your sacrifice. If you don't choose your sacrifice will choose you. It's coming for all of us all the time in small and large ways. So design your life in such a way that you can choose as many of your sacrifices as you're able, as Christ chose the sacrifice of the cross. Okay. Now, sacrifice is sacrifice. It still may be painful, but a sacrifice that you choose, that is a sacrifice that has a reason, that has a why. Why am I doing this? Is always much more endurable. If it has a why, you can endure the what. This is what I must do because why. Choose your sacrifice. Okay. Okay, let's take a look at the questions last week. See what you did. See what we can add to it. Something to flesh this out. All right. And if you happen to notice in the video here, I'll share this right back here. This little smoky plumy thing. Okay, that's an oil diffuser. You know, you put some water and some oil in it because, and I don't know where they're coming from, but my office was just like swarming with fruit flies. No, I didn't leave an orange in my garbage. And so I've been told that peppermint drives the flies away. That's what we're doing. Question number 1, week 13. Why, according to Neff and Moss, is awareness so critical to the success of a not-for-profit NFP? Trinity, you went first. Let's take you first. Awareness is critical because it's about understanding your own organization, your competition, and the broader environment at all the same time. Neff and Moss explains that awareness works as a kind of triple check, helping organizations evaluate their own efforts, see what others are doing, and stay in tune with what markets care about. Okay, excellent answer. It was a surprise to me, you know, when I started doing more and more work in not-for-profits, how unaware some of them can be. And in fact, I worked for one, I won't name it, but it was a state branch of a very large national not-for-profit. I was in the state of Wisconsin, and I was responsible for collecting all of the money for this state organization that I was the head of development. And the director at the time, a difficult character, and she would become so angry. I mean, like pound the table angry when people would not give money to the organization. And she would rail and you know, get angry at the people, get angry at the world, get angry at God. It was a Christian organization, and then she would begin to reel out a series of excuses. Well, we just take too radical of a stand for people to understand what we're really doing, and they're not prayerful enough, and they don't care. And I would, you know, listen to this, and finally, in what I thought was a move to help her, I pulled the statistics, fundraising statistics, from about a half a dozen organizations that were much further out on the fringe. This was a pro-life organization, and in the state of Wisconsin, not a real strong pro-life state. Which, you know, and I suppose in a way that's sort of a misnomer. Everybody is pro their own life, but the question is, are you pro-life of somebody else too? Anyway, tough state to work in. But I said, look, you know, to the head of this organization, she was my boss, she was the director. I said, look, the problem is not that we have a message that people don't like to hear. Because I'll show you a list of organizations, you know, about as long as my forearm, that have much wackier messages than we do that are raising money. I mean, and on this list was like, and then, no kidding, was NAMBLA, the National Man Boy Love Association. And I need not say any more than that. You're like, ah! I said, look, it's not, you know, we're not raising money. People aren't giving us money. It's not because of the position we take. It's because of the process by way of fundraising that we've adopted. It's not them, it's us. There was a lack of critical awareness within the organization. And, you know, how did my sage advice go? Well, I'm no longer working there. So, you know, what does that tell you? You know, how was my instructive advice received? Didn't want to hear it. Okay. Be aware if you get into not-for-profit work, this is a common problem. That is a lack of awareness of how the organization fits within the market, because they tend, not all of them, but they tend to be tremendously introspective, focused on their own thing. And they tend to demand that others ascend to their point of view. And this is the worst mistake that can happen for not-for-profit. They assume that people ought to be giving them their money. None of us, I don't care if you're working for an organization or you're working for yourself, none of us has the right to demand that anybody do anything with their money. It's their money. All right. That's a privilege if you get some of that. Not a right. Question number 2. Add ADV equals awareness squared plus call to action squared. What do each of the elements mean to the success of NFP? Why are some of the elements in the equation squared? Okay. So I said, please explain the following equation from Neff and Moss. Now, putting concepts into equations, you don't see that real commonly. Okay. But these are, when you see this, okay, when you see something like this, understand what's going on here. This is just a different mode. This is just a different presentation to help people come to the understanding of a concept. And you might be saying to yourself, well, yeah, mission failed, because if you put anything that any idea that in anything that looks like math, you already lost me, dude. I get it. All right. But it's a way to catch people's attention. That's why authors sometimes do it. And I'm going to give you a couple examples here, but let's get to your answers first. Alicia, the equation ADV equals awareness squared plus call to action squared means the advertising message is specific enough to be effective or impactful to the target audience. Every advertising awareness, here we quote from the text, every advertising awareness action needs to have an equal or greater call to action. In more words or less, advertising must balance the value of awareness in action. Okay, so advertising, that is this actually effective, equals, so in other words, advertising, and again, this is common in communication studies, period, not for profit. People think that advertising is the ad on Facebook, is the Google ad. No. That is not advertising. That is the thing. Advertising is the success or the outcome, be it success or failure, that the thing has in relationship to the organization. Does that make sense? That's an important distinction. Advertising is not the picture. It's not the video. Okay? That's the representation of what you're trying to do. That is the artifice of what you're trying to do. We get the word art. It's shorthand for artifice. It's a representation of something. The advertising is the effect that it has. And therefore, how do you measure whether this is advertising? Well, does it equal double the awareness plus double call to action? Are those built into the advertising, and did it work? Are people more aware, and are people called to action than they were before? Okay, that's what they're trying to tell you. Now, again, you could say, yeah, put something in a mathematical equation, dude. You already lost me. Yeah, I get that. I've done this myself with my children. I would take them aside, and after like 1 or 2 or maybe 3 times, they saw the shtick coming. They'd roll their eyes, go, oh, here we go again. But when they were having difficult times and trying to figure out, jobs and grades and whatever, I said, come here, son or daughter. I have 3 sons and a daughter. I said, I'm going to give you the secret equation to life, the recipe for the secret sauce. And if you follow this recipe, everything else in life will fall into place for you. Are you ready? I would say, you know, the first time I did it, I go, oh, yeah, there's a secret recipe to life. Yeah. And here it is. E, let's see if I can get that to focus. E plus R equals O. All right, there we go. E plus R equals O. O leads to E. I said, that's it. That's the secret recipe. And they're like, oh, wow, what does that mean? You know, what is that recipe? What is that formula? E, the event, plus R, so get that to focus, not focusing yet, plus R, which is your reaction, equals the outcome. And the outcome drives the next event. That's the secret recipe to life. And go, oh, Dad, stupid. It's true. So sometimes we can take larger concepts and reframe them in a way that people might understand, right? E plus R equals O. The event, which you cannot control, plus your reaction, which you have absolute control over, drives the outcome. And then the outcome drives the next event. All right. Now, you might be saying, oh, I see. So Dr. Gardner tortures his children. He practiced on them long before he got to us. No, we know this. That is putting things in different forms so people might understand them. We've learned this at the feet of the Master, that is our Lord Christ. All right. I refer you, for example, to the Gospel of Mark, chapter 4. Okay. And it goes like this. Again, Jesus began to teach by the lake. The crowd that gathered around him was so large that he got into a boat and sat out on the lake while all the people were along the shore at the water's edge. And he taught them many things by parable. And in his teaching, he said, listen, a farmer went out to sow his seed. And as he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell in rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly, but because the soil was so shallow, when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, they withered, and they died. They had no roots. Other seeds fell among the thorns, which grew up and choked the plants, so they did not bear grain. Still other seeds fell on good soil. They came up, grew, produced a crop, some multiplying 30, 60, some 100 times. Jesus said, whoever has ears to hear, let them hear. Now, he's not saying, oh, hey, are there some of you out there with these apparatus missing from the side of your head? No, that's not what he meant. He's saying, if you understand this, understand this. However, when he was finished with the teachings, these various parables, and he was alone again with the 12. The 12 and others around him, they began to ask about the parables. He told them, the secret of the kingdom of God has been given to you, but to those on the outside, everything is in parable, so that they may be ever seeing, but never perceiving, ever hearing, never understanding. Otherwise, they might turn. They might turn away. What's the message here? Structure your communications in such a way that you catch people's attention, that you put it in a language, terminology, examples, allusions that they understand. Some people click with these mathematical concepts. Some people, when you tell them it's a recipe or a secret formula, I don't like the word magic spell because that wanders into different metaphysical territory. But when you tell them secret recipe, like secret sauce, because we're so commercialized in our heads, we're thinking Big Macs, secret recipe, secret sauce. They go, oh yeah, really? Like what? That's what's going on, okay, with this structure from Neff and Moss, the advertising equals awareness squared plus call to action squared. Okay, question number 3. According to Neff and Moss, how is structure crucial to an idea's survival and the advance of innovation of a not-for-profit? Maya, structure ensures that the process and systems are in place to evaluate, develop, test, and track. Neff and Moss identify 4 structural elements that indicate solid foundation in an organization's culture and norms around innovation. They encourage not-for-profits to incorporate experimentation, encouragement, evaluation, and rewards around awareness and ideation. One of the things, again, that you will find in not-for-profits is they tend, not all of them, but they tend to not be well structured. They tend to be heavily ideologically driven, or people that get into them, they say inspiration, but it's really their ideology. They can be haphazard. I mean, gosh, I've lost track of how many times I've been sitting around in meetings and trying to figure out, people like, okay, how do we raise more money? We've got to hit this amount of money by next quarter. And someone will say something, sorry, dopey, like, oh, hey, I heard that, and actually heard this once. I was with a Catholic organization. I heard that Mel Gibson gives a lot of money to Catholic organizations. He has a lot of money. He can give us money. And I'm sitting there listening to this going, I'm thinking about the person that's talking. Do you know Mel Gibson? Do you know anybody that knows Mel Gibson? Do you know if Mel Gibson even knows who we are? Do we have a relationship with Mel Gibson? Or is your plan to simply walk up to Mel Gibson, however it is you're going to find him, and say, oh, hey, by the way, I'm from blah, blah, blah organization. Give me money. If you run into that, that's an indicator by way of the organization that you're with is you might want to start looking for the exit, because this thing may not be around for very long. Okay. Structure. Question 4. List the 3 main elements of Neff and Moss's staffing solutions. In addition to these 3, would you add any additional elements? Which of the 3, in your informed opinion, is most important for the survival of a not-for-profit? Okay. Emeraude, great French name. You went last, but you know what? I'm sorry. I picked Shadara, excuse me, because you have these delineated out. So sorry, we'll get to you another time. Okay. The 3 main elements for Neff and Moss staffing solutions are the right people. Does your team have the right amount of skill? The right roles? Are employees in the right positions? The right skills? How are we seeking candidates? And actually, or right skills, meaning does the people in the roles have the capacity to do the thing? Here's something that tends to occur in not-for-profits, especially small ones, but it's not exclusive to small ones. They get it into their head that we just got to have people, we got to have help. And so they often run large volunteer, or they're staffed by volunteers, or some portion of what they do is staffed by volunteers, and they select the volunteers because they'll volunteer. They don't select the volunteers because they have the right skill set, they're the right person for the job, they have the right temperament for the job, they are put in the right roles. I have been in not-for-profits, huge national not-for-profits, big media not-for-profits. And one in particular, I ran their entire volunteer network on a national level that ran and staffed all the phones during the telethons that they needed to raise millions of dollars. And when I took over that role, I was shocked by some of the people that were in key positions. And it was quite clear to me, and you watch out for this in not-for-profits, okay, that those people needed the not-for-profit, those people in these key roles, these volunteers, they needed to be with the not-for-profit for some sense of identity, for some sense of purpose. Some of them, it was clear from talking to them that they use their involvement with this not-for-profit for bragging rights to their friends. They needed to be involved with the not-for-profit much more than the not-for-profit needed them or to be involved with them, because they were not the right people and they were not in the right roles and they did not have the right skill sets. But the not-for-profit had got it into its head, and this is what happens, that we've just got to have somebody. No, you don't. You don't settle for anybody, because sometimes nobody is better than anybody, because you get the wrong person in there. Ay, ay, ay. can you run into problems? And that's what Neff and Moss are getting at when they run down the staffing solution, sort of 3 criteria. All right, that's the takeaway. Okay, everybody, half an hour's up and then some change. Week 14, keep on doing great. Some of you have been reaching out to me with questions about specific definitions and stuff. Yeah, and I'm available in my office hours. You want to jump on a Zoom and talk? Let's do it. Okay, and I'll try to answer your questions as best as I'm able and get you to a place where you're wrapping your head around this. All right. So until the next time, remember, I am thinking about you. I'm praying for you. And as always, I will see you on Canvas. Take care. God bless. Bye-bye.